on a couple different things. But the goal of this live right now is to really share some knowledge on how essentially I was able to acquire two companies, one with my current partner here and another with a prior partner, and to give you guys more insight. And also, in addition to that, I wanted to give you guys a biblical Christian perspective as well on some of the things that has led to our success, some things that basically led to us some failures in my past. But yeah, so that's kind of what the goal of today is, and I want to continue to do this more regularly. I've been off of social media for some time now, and I'll kind of give you guys a whole rundown of that. But before I do that, I wanted to introduce you guys to my partner, Jonathan. We're the owners of Congdon and Company, also Verify Financials. And basically, we are an accounting and tax firm. And, Jonathan, can you just give a brief introduction of yourself?
Yeah, so I've been securities licensed for 16 years, and I was really excited about this opportunity because what we really want to do here with the firm is make it a more holistic and proactive firm where, instead of having everybody work in their own silos, we can bring all the experts together and make more holistic, comprehensive plans, where we're not just focused on one specific area, but we can coordinate with others to bring the whole picture together for a client.
Awesome, awesome. Appreciate that. So yeah, I mean, before we get into that, we're gonna the whole structure of today's call. You're actually gonna find out how we met, which is God, all God in itself. Um, but I wanted to kind of break down exactly like why I had to disappear. So I've been gone off of social media for I think about what? It's been almost 7, 8 months now, and really I had to do that in order so I could get to a place where I had to focus. And as I kind of go, if you have anything that you want to like add to it in terms of value to the audience, feel free to
I'll
just
pipe up.
yeah. But when you are trying to accomplish something in whether it's in business, finances, wherever aspect of your life, everything comes at an opportunity cost. So if you're trying to achieve a goal, especially with like this new year coming up, if you're trying to achieve a goal, you also have to think about what is it that you're going to sacrifice. And for me, a big part of that was social media because I realized that not only was it a distraction in multiple ways, I realized that if I let social media go, I could focus my full attention on acquiring CPA firms. And that was a big goal of mine. Do you have any input on, I guess, that topic?
Sacrifice, yeah, I was
Sacrifice?
I was working from home, spent a lot of time with the family, and now I'm here all day, every day.
Yeah, exactly. So, yeah, I remember when Jonathan and I first started working. It was definitely I like he first started working together. And he was like, "What am I gonna be doing every single day?" And this was like week one or week two. He thought that he was scared that there wasn't gonna be enough for him to do, and I was like, "Don't worry, like yeah, there's definitely gonna be plenty for you to do." And he's definitely found himself doing a lot since we've came into this company. Um, but
I was worried that I wouldn't be able to add value, but
yeah, hmm
hopefully I am.
exactly. So with that, when I decided to basically going before, even before I was looking at acquiring these firms, there was a lot of like limiting beliefs as it came to acquiring firms in itself. And I'm sure Jonathan could give you more input on it because we didn't know each other a year ago. We didn't know each other a year ago. We actually met. What was it like February of?
So it's the beginning of the year, yeah,
Yeah,
or
yeah.
like early in the year.
But to get to a place where you acquire a multi-million dollar company, there's a mindset things that you must overcome. And I say that because right around 2 to 3 years ago, when I was basically a solo practitioner, I remember I watched a video on an Alex Hormozy video, and he was talking about how he acquired his first gym to kind of launch his career. And I was like, what if I could take that same concept and apply it in the CPA world, as opposed to just trying to build my own book of business for multiple years? What if I just acquired firms? So I initially was like, oh yeah, like I started calling brokers up, looking at firms, and this was in Phoenix, Arizona at the time. And I remember one of the CPA firms that I talked to, or one of the brokers that I talked to, he basically started asking me, he was like, how much money are you currently making? How many clientels do you have? And based off of my answers, he basically disqualified me from, potentially looking at these companies. He made it seem like I wasn't making enough money in order to qualify for an acquisition of a multi-million dollar company, basically, right? And that's one of the first lessons is don't allow people to disqualify you. One of the big things is you must understand who your creator is. And I'm actually going to get more into that later, but that was one of the way that's how I was able to destroy those limiting beliefs that other people try to project onto me during that time. And also coming from a place of growing up in a place where people weren't buying accounting firms or businesses when I was growing up. I didn't grow up in an environment where I saw that. So my belief and my faith in God enabled me to dream big and to see those visions that God had for me in my life. So with that being said, like Jonathan, I'm actually curious, was there ever a point where you felt like you were like disqualified or not like this goal of acquiring a firm was not achievable?
Yeah, yeah, but actually what you said though there is pretty amazing, right? Because especially the way we met, um, if you were in a position where you felt like you wouldn't be able to get qualified, and then, we just sort of magically come together, you know what I mean, and partner up to make it happen. And it's I mean, in a very unusual way. So, like you said earlier, it's definitely a God thing for sure.
Mm-hmm.
And and yeah, I mean, I don't have any tax experience, accounting experience. But even on my own sort of journey, everything just seemed to kind of line up. So, for me, I read a book. It was Buy Then Build. And then from there, I started discovering people who had bought accounting firms that weren't accountants. And so so yeah, the whole time there's definitely a lot of self-doubt. And that was part of the reasons why I was looking for CPAs to partner with, right? Because I knew that was going to be a hard thing to do on my own, and people have done it on their own that aren't accountants, but I still kind of scratch my head on that one.
Yeah, exactly. And just to kind of give you a verse that if you are limiting yourself, there's a verse in the Bible. It says, for I think it's Jeremiah 4:11, I believe it is, but it basically says, "For I know the plans that I have for you," says the Lord, plans to plans to conquer you, or something like that. Basically, the gist of it is, let's actually look it up. Let's look it up because I want to give you guys the best value that I can here. So let's actually share. I think I had it up earlier. So let's look up Jeremiah 4:11. Well, maybe I guess I don't know the actual verse itself. For I know the plans I have for you. And then let's go ESV. There it goes. Jeremiah 29:11. For I know the plans I have for you, declares the Lord. Plans for welfare and not for evil, to give you a future and a hope. Then you will call upon me and come and pray to me, and I will hear you. You seek me and find me when you seek me with all your heart. Basically, all that is saying is seek the Lord and lean on him and have faith. And that's essentially what you have to think of whenever you are thinking of failures, whenever you are thinking of those challenges. And if it's verses like this that really keeps me going. It's verses like this that helps me with my faith. And even with Jonathan and I, we have adversity. Like just because we acquired a firm doesn't mean we're instantly successful, right? Um, and that was one of the things that essentially Jonathan would tell you when things are challenging. What d- Jonathan could tell you about the mindset that behind it, and what's required when we do face those adversities, when we face those challenges. It's and I think that's one of the reasons why, like, I literally, when Jonathan could tell you so many instances where we were going through challenges, I'm like, I just feel like this is a spiritual battle. And you have to be aware, because if you aren't aware of spiritual battles and those challenges that might come your way, you're going to start getting down on yourself. You're going to start projecting those negative thoughts on yourself. And and you never want to get into that place, because that's where the enemy wants you to be. The enemy wants you to be in a place where you're blaming yourself for not being good enough.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So,
I mean, the mindset and everything,
mm-hmm.
how you approach, when it hits the fan, and how you handle that kind of dictates everything. Because you can be like, oh man, this is garbage, and then your everything just seems to fall apart from there. But if you kind of take it and say, hey, this is an opportunity, maybe I've got something to learn from this. Then you can. Well, I mean, we've faced a challenge here recently, and it's turning out like that might actually be a positive.
Exactly.
But
Exactly.
we could have approached that in a way that's like, oh no, now what are we gonna do?
Mm-hmm.
And but instead we said, hey, I think this is an opportunity, and then we start the more we look into it, the better it gets.
Exactly. No, that's good. So we're gonna kind of go into, now that we just wanted to let you know the setup, guys, is like, as I think of verses in the Bible, I want to try to integrate it and give you guys as much value as I can on that end, because that is really what keeps me going. And as I kind of said, if you don't have a relationship with God, I definitely encourage you to reach out and learn a little bit about something, because when you are down and you don't know where else to go, the Lord will always be there. Um, so want to go? Let's go. Let's actually talk about acquiring companies. Like, how do you even get to a point where you even can think or consider um, what type of company to go after? So first things first,
Don't buy an accounting firm. That's rule number one.
yeah. So I'm a CPA. I'm a certified public accountant. That's what it stands for. I got my master's in accountancy, and you know, it's crazy how things fall into place. A couple years back, I remember working in the corporate world, and I read Rich Dad Poor Dad for the first time, and I instantly wanted to quit my job, because I was like, I'm doing things the wrong way. I'm in the rat race. And essentially, I got to a point where I was so discouraged, but I was like, let me just get my CPA license, then I'll branch off and to my own thing. I ended up, you know, going into the accounting industry after I quit my job. I started building my own book of business. So I chose the CPA industry for my first acquisition, because I already developed a skill set in the accounting space. So if you're out there and you're trying to acquire a business, I would say start with where your skill sets are, or the skill sets that you have available to you, which is called leverage. Jonathan, for example, he's on the wealth management side of things. He doesn't necessarily have the CPA background. So what did Jonathan decide to do? He leveraged me to help acquire a CPA firm. And that's one of the biggest things in business is leverage. in the book Rich Dad Poor Dad, it actually talks about how always have to ask, no, who is it? Who, not how? No, no, not now. No, that's something different. Um, how can it be done? And as opposed to saying it can't be done. So that was one of the biggest things that I think, challenges that I think I had to overcome when I first started in entrepreneurship in general. And that's one of the biggest things that I think prevents a lot of people from achieving a lot of things is is basically telling themselves no before even giving themselves an opportunity. You got anything on that?
Well, I was gonna say you did bring up who not how, and I think that's also a great approach because you can't be an expert at everything, and sometimes there's a shortcut there, right? You know, you don't have to recreate the wheel. You can find the who that can figure out the how. So you don't have to know how to do everything and you know come up with these ideas from scratch. I mean, we're social creatures, and there's a lot of fabulous people out there, and you know, and so being able to find someone that can help you accomplish those goals, um, you know, is also, I think, a shortcut to success. And also, when you're looking to buy a business, right, you want to try to find a business that you can see how you can add value to that business. Because obviously, you know, if you've got a business that's doing whatever, $1 million in revenue, but you know, you can, you know, your skill set is able to come in and, you know, increase that revenue. Well, now, not only you're going to have more revenue, but that business is going to be worth more than it was without you. Um, you know, the silver tsunami, there's a lot of uh, baby boomers that are retiring. A lot of those baby boomers, maybe they've already kind of checked out in their business, you know, and maybe they're still doing well with it. But, you know, you get someone in there younger, maybe with fresh ideas, maybe be able to add more technology to it, whatever the case may be. But you come in, you can kind of see how you can adjust some things and how you think that revenue could go up with marketing, whatever it may be, whatever your strong suits are. And and that's really, if you're looking for a business, that's really what you want to focus in on. How can I take this business and make it better, and then reap the increase in revenue there.
Yeah, exactly. Um, so yeah, going back on, I kind of lost track where we kind of were going with all
I
that.
derailed you.
Yeah, yeah. No, I think there was definitely a lot there. But going back on kind of just like this first acquisition where I basically had a different partner, and you know, we were excited to go into this business venture, and we were so excited, and we acquired this company last December right before tax season. So we did not have much time to really plan. And and I'm that's an excuse. We had plenty of time to plan. We didn't plan enough. And and that's the thing, is like, in the midst of it, when things started going downhill, I got the blame for a lot of things. And and in the midst of it, I didn't understand why. Why? There's I didn't understand why I was getting the blame, why things didn't go in place, why everything just wasn't going how it was supposed to go. And thankfully, I had, my football experience where I was always trained to not give up when things get hard, in addition to my faith. So I basically I say that because with this second acquisition, I was in a learning phase with that first acquisition. I was able to learn what not to do. Unfortunately, like, I mean, typically in the best world, like, you wouldn't have to go to 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 go through some of the things that I had to go through in order to learn. But everything, think of it as a learning opportunity. which reminds me of another verse, and I'm gonna have to look it up here because I guess I just don't know my Bible good enough. I don't know my Bible good enough.
But I will just say too that the hardships that you faced in your first acquisition made this acquisition easier. And I don't think that there is a shortcut to that. You have to go through some of these challenges and failures in order to, I mean, learn on other people's failures and everything as much as you can, but there's a, it's only going to get you so far, right? And I think that not being afraid to mess up or whatever, I mean, I don't know. You look at all these successful entrepreneurs, how many failed companies did they have before they became billionaires, you know?
Yeah.
And so it's not, you're not always going to hit it out of the park each and every time, but you know, with every challenge, it forces you to rise to the occasion and you learn something from it, and then you're that much better the next time. And that's the only way you're ever going to get good at something. You know, when we're babies and we first start, you know, trying to walk, we fall down a lot. You know, you can't just start walking without falling down. It's part of the learning process. It's part of the growth.
No, that's good. And that I'm glad you said that because you actually gave me some time to find the verse that I was looking for.
I'm a time
Um,
filler.
so this is the verse right here. It's one of my favorite verses, Romans 5:3-5. Not only so, but we also glory in our sufferings. It's crazy. Like the Bible's telling us to find glory when we're suffering. And it's it's crazy to think that when you're suffering that you should find the glory in that. But that's the winning mindset is what is the glory when you are going through those sufferings? When everyone's against you, when you feel like nobody's on your side, when your bank account's not showing the work effort that you've been putting in, when your relationship isn't going as well as you thought it would have been, right? When your health isn't well, like when you are suffering, where's your mindset? So because we know that suffering produces perseverance. This is what keeps me going, guys. I love this verse so much. Because we know that suffering produces perseverance. That's literally telling us that without the suffering, you can't grow. And one thing that there's something that let me let me let me change the view real quick here. There's something that a lot of people typically will ask is how they'll be like, why does God let bad things happen? I can't give you an exact answer, but there in some situations there's a bigger scheme to it. And and he God I wouldn't say God doesn't want bad things to happen to you, but he does allow things to happen to you. He allows it because he understands the plan that he has for you. So that's just something to remember. Um
Well, and maybe bad things are also just part of the human condition,
mhm.
right? But maybe faith can help get you through some of that, and maybe help you see beyond it. Because obviously there's a lot of bad things that can happen in life, and you think, oh, why would God allow that, you know, child or whatever to suffer needlessly? But you know, maybe that's even the wrong question, right? I mean, this is just simply part of the world, you know, for whatever reason. And it's what tools can we arm ourselves with to be able to deal with that? And and it seems, and you know, I mean, you know my situation.
Mhm.
I've struggled with faith, but I'm starting, I think, to see that faith can be a great tool in the toolbox to help deal with all that stuff. And I may be coming at this at a little bit of a different angle than maybe you are or whatever, but that's my thought on it.
No, for sure. You hit it spot on. So let's go ahead and read the rest of this verse here. So, um, all right. So we know that suffering produces perseverance, perseverance, character, and character, hope. And hope does not put us to shame because God loves God love has been poured out into our hearts through the Holy Spirit who has been given to us. So basically, what this is saying is, let's switch this here. Basically, what this is saying is, um, through the perseverance, we then build character. So perseverance. So first comes the suffering, then comes the perseverance, meaning we have to mentally be ready to persevere when things get hard. It doesn't just, it's not just going to come. We have to persevere. It takes it takes a certain mindset in order to not quit when things go get hard. Anybody could quit when suffering comes. And it actually reminds me of guys, I'm going live right now, and I'm really being tested with my Bible knowledge right now. Oh
On the
man,
spot.
what's the? Oh man, I'm trying to think of his name. The Bible character. Basically, it starts with a J. Is it? Starts with a J. I can't recall, but basically, this character in the Bible.
Jesus.
No, no, not Jesus. What's the Now I gotta look this up. Joseph. Joseph in the Bible, and y'all gonna have to fact check me. But Joseph essentially one of my favorite characters in the Bible, by the way. Joseph, little rundown on Joseph. Joseph was one of he was favored by his father to basically he was one of his father's favorites, and he had brothers and sisters, but all his brothers and sisters was jealous of him, right? And basically his father, their jealous was so bad that they essentially decided to sell Joseph into slavery. Him and all his brothers and sisters sold Joseph into slavery. And
Oh, this is Mary's husband?
no,
That
not
Joseph?
Mary. No, not
This is a
Mary's.
different Joseph.
This is in the Old Testament.
Okay.
So um I'll confirm real quick here. Oh man. Um yeah, so Joseph, let's see here. Yep, sell into slavery. So yeah, this is I'm trying to remember who his dad was. Jacob. Yeah.
That's
That's why I like him so much. His dad Joseph's dad was Jacob. Jacob and Rachel was Joseph's dad, but um basically they sold Joseph into slavery. And Joseph, he was always favored his whole life. He was favored by God, one of the most favored characters in the Bible. And Joseph, when he was working for his slave master, he was actually a house slave. He would help with like the all the inside stuff, right? And there was this woman that his slave master wife basically tried to have an affair with Joseph, and basically tried to wanted to sleep with Joseph. And Joseph denied the girl, and the girl essentially framed Joseph as essentially trying to come onto her. She ends up running outside and basically said Joseph tried to force himself onto her.
She was offended probably.
Probably.
Like you're a slave, like, I'm
Exactly.
like this high class lady here. You should be groveling.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So then Joseph ends up going to jail for this. And in the midst of like like he's in jail, I don't know about you guys, but I've always thought like I would not survive in jail. I would not survive in
I think you
jail.
do all right, actually.
No, like
Big guy, take care of yourself.
man, my brother has told me some stories.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I don't think I
So you
could
got the
survive.
inside scoop.
I wouldn't survive. I wouldn't survive. So, I don't know what jail was like back in the day, but if I was
It's
in
probably
jail,
worse.
hmm?
It's probably worse then than it is now.
Yeah,
So, yeah.
definitely. Yeah. Yeah. But if I was in jail, I think the only way I would get through is like I would have to read my Bible. Like that's the only thing that would keep me sane.
Mm.
Because I would fear being isolated in a room all day. And
Yeah,
it's like, what would I do?
you'd have to read that verse on perseverance and stuff. You know, say, hey, this is good. I'm
So
getting glory out of this suffering.
exactly. So the reason I say that is Joseph is in jail, and he's in a place where he could lose all hope. He could lose all hope. He could lose all faith that he has in God, but he was faithful during that time. He was faithful. Because of his faithfulness, the the prison the prison warden ended up making Joseph basically his right hand man. And now Joseph is now at a position where, he's not he's a high ranked prisoner at this point. Joseph also would interpret dreams. The word got to the king. The king had a weird dream. He ends up calling Joseph to come help interpret this dream. Joseph ends up interpreting that there's going to be a drought in the city, in the country, in this area. So the king ends up appointing Joseph to be his right hand man. Joseph leave jail to basically be the right hand man of the king at the time. So Joseph went from a slave to basically being in the White House.
Yeah, you wouldn't think that you could get much worse than a slave, but a
Exactly.
slave to then apparently being in a worse position in prison. So it's like you probably
Exactly.
can't even get any lower than that.
Yeah,
And
exactly.
now, yeah, that's wild.
So the crazy part of the crazy part about that story is like Joseph had to persevere through all those challenges in order to make it to where, and he had to trust and trust that God had a plan for him. And the story ends up ending where the same brothers and sisters that sold him into slavery, they end up the drought ends up happening, and those same brothers and sisters end up going to Joseph, didn't recognize him, didn't know he was the right hand man of the king at the time, and basically was like, hey, we need food. And they didn't recognize Joseph. Joseph ends up calling him to go get the dad and the rest of the family. He ends up telling them who he is, and they all wept and everything. But that's why Joseph's one of my favorite characters. But that's
You
that's
know,
what I.
that was my family.
Mhm.
They would say, "Why are you complaining? Look, we did you a favor. We sold you into slavery so that you could become working for the king." They'd downplay my suffering. You know what I mean? I
Yeah,
don't know how your family would be, but that's how my. It's like, why are you complaining? You're doing great. No big deal. We sold you to slavery,
I
but it
could
all worked out.
I could definitely see that. I could definitely see that. Not my family. so so that's one of the reasons why that's one of my favorite stories. But going back, so anytime you're in business or any aspect of your life where you're feeling like suffering, just know, like, go think that you need to have that perseverance so you can build that character. Because that character, once that character gets built, you're gonna be able to endure so much more. And even just us coming into this company, like it was, we had to build perseverance in order to work the hours that we do now,
Oh yeah.
to manage employees, to handle the client issues. Like it doesn't come day one.
No. I mean I've when you also I think feel better about yourself, right? Like when I if my current self would go meet who I was a year ago, um, I would be my younger self would be proud. Like, oh wow, you were able to take this risk and I've definitely grown from it, and so yeah, it's definitely not been easy, but it's just so worth it.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. Um,
I was gonna say too, I think it was Dan Martell. I'm probably going to butcher this, but he said something like, do you know the difference between a successful entrepreneur and one that's not successful? And it's that it's perseverance. They just don't give up
Yep.
because it's not a matter of if you're successful, it's when, and you just keep going until you hit that success.
Yeah, exactly. So, this brings me to where we're at today, basically, or before I transition and like we're talking about like the and honestly, I think it's important that we talk about like the pain and the sufferings in business because a lot of times in social media, like you don't hear this stuff. Like a lot of times they tell you, oh, like you make all this passive income and you get to travel the world and uh, there's a point that you get there, but it's not gonna start like that. 80% of the time, you're going to be dealing with a lot of issues in your business.
Now, I will say though, there are some out there that will talk about how difficult it is. But I'll say the difficulty, for a lot of my life, I always avoid like, oh, that'll be hard, so you avoid it, right?
Hmm.
But parenting is actually the thing that kind of changed my mind on that, right? Because parenting is hard, but it's kind of like nothing easy is worth doing, I mean, parenting is one of the most challenging things, but man, it's just so rewarding, and I think business is a lot like that too. So yeah, it is hard, but you don't want to avoid it because it's hard. You want to pursue it because it's hard.
Yeah. I mean, that happens to me on a day to day, like every single day.
I can
Like,
tell. I see your face.
I think just last week we were talking about how we, like when you have work to do and you just want to procrastinate because you're just like thinking about like all the things you got to figure out and you just have to literally like force your literally just before this stream like I'm telling Jonathan like I really don't want to stream right now, man. I'm like he's a big reason why I'm streaming right now because I was definitely looking for an escape.
As I was twisting his arm, I said, "Listen, buddy, put on your big girl pants. We got to do this." Not really. I was like, "I don't want to do it either."
I didn't force him, but I highly encourage Jonathan to join me today. He hasn't really streamed or really posted like that before, so this is like brand new experience, which is a big major step for him.
I've made a few
So
tortoise videos. That's about
okay.
it.
um so yeah, I wanted to basically this my first company because of everything I went through. I wanted to actually share a very important verse that we kind of went discussed yesterday in church. Um, it was James 4. James James is a great book in the Bible. If you ever get a chance to read it, definitely read it. So are we? Is this the right screen? Yeah. Okay. Cool. So this is James 4 here. We're gonna probably read a good amount here. So, what causes quarrel? What causes quarrels and what causes fights among you? Is it not this that your passions are at war within yourselves? And I think in other versions here, let's look at the NIV real quick. Um it says the passions are at war within yourself. Or I don't know, it didn't change. It didn't change. Okay. There you go. So, don't they come from your desires that battle within yourself? So, desires, pleasures, passions, all the same thing. And basically, it's saying like a lot of times when we fight, it's because we have like worldly desires that we want to happen, but they don't happen, right? So for me and my prior partner, we essentially had desires that didn't align with each other, and that caused us to basically fight. And when I say fight, like we were in full like blown arguments in the office, like most unprofessional. It was just a very bad like setting to be in, and I down the road like I never felt good about it. I think by the time the summer came, I literally got to a point where if I read this verse a lot sooner and I applied it, I would have not have entertained a lot of the arguments as much, right? And at the end of the day, like there's later on in this verse, it actually talks about humbling yourself. And why I bring this up is like if you're gonna have a partner, you need to understand that sometimes your desires, the passions, the things that you want might not happen. And and going back to like planning, you could prevent a lot of those things from those disagreements from planning in the front end of things before you guys even are partners, to make sure that your vision actually aligns with each other. So
And that was a big thing when we met.
oh
We
yeah,
talked about,
mm-hmm.
because you already, had some of that experience that you had to persevere through, and thankfully, because I mean, obviously, we really didn't know each other, and I wouldn't recommend going into business with people you don't know. It's probably not the most optimal way to go about it, but for us, I think we definitely lucked out. But that was one thing that you were definitely harped on, was let's nail down this vision, make sure that we're on the same page with things, and we were.
I had faith. I had faith, and that's why I partnered with Jonathan.
You had to have. It's the only way you could do it. You had to take a leap of faith.
When I tell you, I don't know if I ever told Jonathan this, but when I tell you I had to have faith, Jonathan called me one day. He said, "What's your social security number?" I said, one, two, four." Like we just met. So I literally like I had to have a lot of faith. Um, but yeah, that's man, we could laugh at about it now. Let's continue reading this verse here, and we're gonna have to do part two or something. I don't know how how long we've been streaming for.
No, I was wondering if you.
It's 6:36. 6:36.
Okay,
We
so
started at like 5:30,
maybe.
maybe.
Man, an
Okay.
hour flew by.
Yeah, I know.
We're gonna have to get to our super
I
chats.
I told you I was like, you're like, what are we gonna talk about for an hour? I'm like, I did it the other day. We're like, we got this. So, but let's go ahead and finish this verse, and then we could probably pick up with like the rest of the story, a different day. Really wanted to just make sure we cover the rest of this verse though. So let's go back. You desire but do not have, so you kill. You could covet. Let me go back to the ESV version. You desire and do not have, so you murder. You covet and cannot obtain, so you fight and quarrel. You do not have because you did not ask. That is a I think it's the thing I like about this verse is like it's literally telling us that if you want something, you need to ask God. A lot of times we don't even ask God. But then when we do ask, what happens? Look at the next verse. You ask and you do not receive because you ask wrongly to spend it on your passions. Literally, it's telling us that we don't receive the things that we ask because our heart is in the wrong place. Our heart is on our own passions. Our heart is on what we want. It's not on what's best for our relationship with God. It's not. It's we're so when you ask for something, you need to understand your purpose. You need to understand the vision that God has for your life, because if you don't understand those things and you're asking God for things, He might not give it to you because it's not in a line with your God-given purpose. So that's why it's so important to really understand who you are, who your creator is, and your purpose in this life. You got anything you want to add to that, or I can keep
No,
reading
keep
here?
going. Yeah, that's good.
You adulterous people, do you not know that friendships with the world is enmity with God? Therefore, whoever wishes to be a friend of the world makes himself an enemy of God. Man, this is good, guys. This is so good. So I really this verse really hits home to me because I think a lot of times we don't realize the trends of the world. we don't realize the common denominators, the things around us. If you see 80%, 80, 90% people doing something, it's probably not for of God. I'll tell you that right now. Everything that I see around me, I always think it is that of God or not. And if you look at something, you don't see how it's building God's kingdom. You don't see how it's for God's glory. It's probably not of God. There's good and then there's evil. There's really no in between. And you gotta look at everything around you and realize that that's what this life is. And that's why I say everything is literally a spiritual battle. It's a matter of understanding what kind of spirit it's coming from. Um, so let's see here. Or do you, let me share again here. Or do you suppose it is to no purpose that the scripture says he yearns jealously over the spirit that he has made to dwell in us, but he gives us more grace. Therefore, it says, God opposes the proud, but gives grace to the humble. That there it goes right there, guys. That's why I was trying to tell you guys earlier. You got to be humble. You got to be humble. If you're not humble, I'll tell you right now, you're gonna have a lot of issues in your life because if you're coming from a place of pride, how can you ever be in agreement with anybody? How can you be in agreement with God? How can you be in agreement with your partner? How can you be in agreement with your wife? How can you be in agreement with friends, anybody in your life, if you're not humble? You're gonna be you're more than likely gonna be very lonely because everyone around you it's gonna be not clear as day that you're not humble. And this is why I say anything that is not of God is basically not for us. And the reason I say that is what we're talking about right now, what I'm talking about is against what most people will tell you. I've heard things like, "Oh, don't forget about humility." People would a lot of business gurus out there would tell you do whatever it takes for money. And there's some things that just ain't worth it. So when you hear advice like that, that's contrary to what the Bible literally says, that's when you have to realize that you got to realize like that's bad advice. That's not the advice that God would tell me. And that's why I said you have to be able to differentiate knowledge that is of God and knowledge that is not of God because everything sounds good. Everything sounds good, but not everything is in line with the truth of what the Bible says. And in business, it's gonna be so important that you know that in business because a lot of times when it comes to money, people will do whatever. People will do whatever, and that's another thing is like when you're having disagreements in business, a lot of the times it's because of money. It's because when I say things go south, people are scared of losing money. And if you're gonna be in disagreement with a partner because you're scared of losing money, you're allowing money to have control over you. Is money really worth it? Is money of the world or is it of God? Money, literally, like it's money is not everlasting. So very important to understand that. And I'm very passionate about this stuff. If you guys haven't seen, I a lot of people typically don't see this side of me, and that's why I figured it would be good for us to go live. Um, and let's go ahead and finish this verse here, guys. I don't want to hold you guys too long. But great way to go into our Christmas Eve here. Submit yourselves therefore to God, resist the devil, and he will flee from you. Draw near to God, and he will draw near to you. Cleanse your hands, you sinners, and purify your heart. You you double minded. Um, that's really that's kind of the cutoff right there. There's not the rest of that verse is good, so I definitely would encourage you guys to go and read it. But those were the main lessons that I really wanted to like pull from that. And like I said, we required. I was able to acquire two companies in the past year. I The first company I thought was impossible. When I say thought it was impossible, I doubted a little bit, but you know, that's why God literally tells you all you need is faith as much as a mustard seed. That's it. You don't need to have you don't have to have tremendous faith. God encourages you, and that's why, we have a good God, but um, so yeah, we talked. We cut off on the second company and the challenges and how we were able to acquire it, and how where we're at now. So we're gonna tune in probably tomorrow, or Jonathan probably won't be on tomorrow, but I might be on. So I'll give you guys part two of the story, but this right here is important for you to understand because we're talking about pain, we talked about suffering, we're talking about the things that people overlook. They tell you to get into business, but they don't warn you how hard it's gonna be, right? So, if you like this video, if you like this live, y'all make sure to comment, like, subscribe. It was a pleasure to hop on with you guys tonight. But yeah,
Stay tuned for episode 2 though, because it's a wild story.
definitely a wild story. All right, y'all. I'll see you guys on the next episode.